And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the DFS Minute. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, aka Rath. Find me on Twitter at FantasyWrath. Welcome to Roto Curve. Today is June 16, 2015. And I had a pretty good night last night. We did nail a lot of the pitchers that we recommended, other than Tanaka, who kind of broke even. But we had Chen, we had Liriano, we had Han. So, good day all around there. Even threw out Lackey, but did say, be careful based on the weather. So he looked pretty good too. But no, good night overall. And one of our members, Seth, had a good night. Basically turned a buck into about 175 over on FanDuel. So for a guy who's playing smaller stakes, grinding it out, that's a pretty big win. And he did give us kudos. Basically, I had thrown out there that I thought Rognet Odor might be a very sneaky play on FanDuel last night. I mentioned that in our chat. He was 2,200, and they had bumped him up to 6th in the lineup. It looks like they had gone with a very heavy left-handed lineup. He'd been tearing up AAA, and for minimum salary on FanDuel, I was like, hey, you know what? If you're playing in a tournament and you got big bats, at the corners and the outfield and things like that, he had gone with like an Astros stack and also a Orioles stack. So he loaded up with a lot of power bats. So Odor actually was like 1% owned, came through like a 5 at 2.2, which was good for him. And that's the kind of thing that you need in a tournament. You need those guys to come through, those super cheap guys that are low owned to come through for you. So good job for Seth last night. Congratulations to him. Good stuff there. We like seeing guys win and then give us thanks for the advice. So talk about a little bit today. We're going to talk about the Roto Curve head-to-head challenge over on Fantasy Score. DraftKings Kings Cup, talk about line moves from last night, Kyle Schwarber's promotion, what that means for us as daily fantasy sports players, and how long is he going to be up for. And then we'll talk about today's slate a little bit, mostly from a pitching perspective. We got 5 early games and we got 10 late games. So a very nice split slate, and pitching options late. Not many, but we do have a couple of pitching options early on. And we'll also talk about interleague play and what that means for you as a daily fantasy player. So let's get into it. Roto Curve head-to-head challenge. Forum thread is posted. We do want to start this thing on Wednesday. We're trying to get it to 16. So any new player that goes and deposits over on Fantasy Score, it's a minimum deposit of $20. As I said yesterday, here's why you want to play on Fantasy Score. If you play on FanDuel, it's the same scoring, except they don't give negative points for outs. So I like that. Also, 2 pitchers, not 1. So I like that. They have late swap. Gotta like that. And their salary structure is that I believe the minimum is around $1,500 or $1,600. So you can actually get more value by finding these cheap guys and then getting big bats in your lineup. So you can actually get 2 stud pitchers, some big bats, and then go digging deep for those value plays over on Fantasy Score and build yourself a pretty good lineup. I had a lot of fun playing over there. I like the structure. I like the format. And so I'm looking forward to playing over there again with this head-to-head challenge. So again, last week we threw out a $100 bonus with a fleece and a T-shirt. So it's about like $150 to $200 package for the guy that won it. So, you'd be crazy not to jump in this. We play low stakes head-to-heads. I think $2 is the lowest that you can play on Fantasy Score. It's not about the money. It's about the fun and the competition. So, again, if you're a Roto Curve member of our community, please, we encourage you to go to Fantasy Score, make a deposit through our links, and participate in this head-to-head challenge. It's a lot of fun, and we had a blast doing it last week, and we want to do it again this week. We want to run them every week. So, again, let's get some participation over into the head-to-head bracket challenge this week. We had a lot of weather issues last night. Just want to reiterate about Danielle's value to us here at rotocurve.com. At WeatherDFS is her handle on Twitter. We do have the link on rotocurve.com. Her videos usually come out around 5 to 5:30 Eastern. So she breaks down all the weather, the radar, the charts, the whole nine, and gives you an explanation as to what potentially is going to happen. So just be aware, we're coming into the summer. Mostly April, we do worry about rain a little bit more, but now we're having to worry about more thunderstorms, humidity, things like that. And I talk about humidity. Humidity is going to be a big factor in what we look at as far as the ball flying out. A place like Texas, where it gets very hot in the summer, the ball tends to fly out a lot in Texas in the summer because of the humidity. So that's something that, we'll talk about further, but it's something that Danielle's going to be covering as far as humidity and the impact and what we need to do and look at. So it is a real metric that people do look at in daily fantasy baseball. So a lot, like, it's actually more effective than the wind, I think. Over on DraftKings, they announced a pretty big promotion. Very cool, starting up the middle of July, and it's called the Kings Cup, and it's going to be 32 teams. 24 teams are direct buy-in at around $5,300. Now, I know what you're saying. Oh, wow, $5,300. But here's the thing. I'm just letting you know about the promotion because they are reserving 8. It's only a 32-man field, and they're basically head-to-head matchups, and they're going to run it like the World Cup, the way the format's going to run. So it's very cool. Excited about this. Hopefully we can do these in other sports or do, but basically here's the thing is they're going to do 32 teams, 24 direct buy-in. They already have 18 out of 24 spots filled. So 8 of the seats, 8 out of 32 are going to be qualifiers anywhere from $3 to $27. So you're going to be able to get in that way. I know I'm going to want to fire some entries in there just to see if I can get in. But I'm pretty excited about this. I think it's fun. Again, we talk about fun in daily fantasy sports. It's not all about the money. Yes, this is a money contest. But again, this is something fun. It's creative. It's unique. And that's really what the industry needs to do in order to continue to grow, to bring in new players. So I think it's a fun concept, fun format. They go from 32 down to 16. Basically, you play 3 head-to-head matchups and over the span of a week or so, and then they go from 32 down to 16, and then basically they play off from there. But it's going to be spread out from July 10th to August 2nd, and it's a fun promotion. Basically, it's about a 3-week tournament, and it's a great time because you're running it just around the All-Star break through the end of August, and that's really the slowest time for daily fantasy baseball. So it keeps people on the site. Maybe they'll run more of these if this thing fills up and they run this. I believe the total prize pool is about 150 or 160-ish around there. But if this fills up, maybe they run more of them. It's a good way to keep people on the site during a time where it's really slow and keep interest in action. So the timing is perfect for this thing, in my opinion. There's a lot more details I don't want to get into, but just go over to their playbook site. They have everything detailed out. So we talked about line moves last night on the DFS Minute PM edition because there were significant line moves, especially with Liriano and Chen, and we saw that pay off in a big way. It doesn't always pay off. You have to be careful because Porcello did have a big line move, but that line was false last night. I was talking to somebody online on Twitter, talked about who the best underdog of the day was, and I said the Braves, because for some reason Porcello went from -130 to -170. The Braves are good against righties, and for some reason the Red Sox right now shouldn't be favored that heavily against anybody, even the Phillies. The Red Sox right now stink, and so the Braves coming to the American League, picking up the DH. I really thought that that was a crazy number. But with Liriano going up against the White Sox, that was a situation where they lose their DH, so their lineup is even weaker. And Liriano's been a beast at home. And then the Pirates are playing really well right now. The Pirates and the Indians are the 2 teams I like coming into the season to make it to the World Series. And they started off very slow, so I was looking really bad. But they're starting to come on. The Indians still have a ways to go. But I think overall at the end of the year, I do feel confident that I think that either one of these teams is going to get to the World Series, the Pirates or the Indians. Might come down to who makes a trade. But got to like both teams' pitching staffs, and I think that's what's, obviously their lineups are pretty good too. So we talk about line moves, with Chen against the Phillies, his line had jumped significant as well. I was somewhat on Chen early in the day, but when that line moved, significantly, about 40, 50, 60 points, depending on where you were at, that really made him a great play, especially a second pitcher or a tournament play, and he came through huge. The Philadelphia Phillies right now are the worst team in baseball, worst lineup in baseball, and they're really struggling. So you see today, Chris Tillman's already popping about -200. So that's something that just be aware of, is that people are going to pick on the Phillies even more now with this lineup, especially if they start trading some pieces like Utley and Howard. It's really going to get bad. So we talked about the weather situation last night. Again, you just make sure you follow Danielle. The crazy thing about Seth's lineup, is that if he had jumped into go back to Seth real quick. His line, he put up a 72.75, but he played either one of the live qualifiers last night, he would have took them down. If he had played any monster GPPs, I know he probably doesn't want to hear this, but it just goes to show you that just because you play small stakes, now all of a sudden he's starting to build a bankroll. He's building confidence, and that's something that you want to definitely look at. Maybe now he starts playing in a 5 or a 10 instead of a 1, and he starts putting up these same results. He's going to start building his bankroll even further. So, take those winnings. Let's start building on it, and I'm looking forward to seeing, what he continues to do. But, again, we want to encourage all the RotoCurve members to participate in the forums and the chat and let us know if you're in a slump, or let us know if you hit big and you had a big win, and let us know, how you did it. That way there we can all help each other. Talk about prospects being called up. There's been a lot of prospects called up. We talked about him yesterday. The one guy you got to be mindful of is Kyle Schwarber for the Cubs, who's probably going to be catcher eligible at this point. He may not end up being a catcher in the major leagues. We don't know yet because there's some concerns about the defense. But you know what? Maybe he sticks at catcher for a year or two, and then they got to move him to a corner outfield spot or whatever. But here's the thing. Schwarber, monster power, and just be aware of his pricing and what he comes out at. He's going to play in the interleague games when they go play in the American League. He'll be the DH. So that's why they're calling him up. As soon as they're done with interleague and they don't have the DH, he's going back down. So you got a short window to take advantage of Schwarber. Now he's probably going to be a tournament-only play for me. But again, massive power, huge tournament option, probably going to be very cheap early in the beginning, depending on what site you play on. But, if he's catcher eligible, which we hope he is, he should be, he's going to be a serious option over the next few days in daily fantasy. So just be aware, Kyle Schwarber for the Cubs is going to get called up. He'll be the DH when they go to the American League and they go to the Indians. Today, we talked about a 5-game slate early on, 10-game slate late. Again, talked about it last night. Watch interleague. This is a big impact of interleague play for DFS. When an American League team goes to the National League, their lineup is weaker because they lose the DH. That also strengthens your National League pitcher, depending on what the matchup is. We saw that with Ariana last night. We saw that with Chen. Again, Chen was at home. But still, these guys do have an advantage. A lot of times they haven't seen the pitcher. And so when the American League team goes over to a National League ballpark, they lose the DH. So that's how you want to play that. It helps the pitcher. It hurts the lineup. Now, when a National League team goes to the American League, they add a DH. So it hurts the pitcher on the other side, and it helps the lineup. So just be aware. Also, when you got a DH that's coming into play, a lot of times it's a bench bat, and it's platoon situation. So you're going to get a guy with a good split edge at a very cheap price, hopefully at a very key spot in the lineup, hitting 3, 4, 5 potentially. So just be aware of interleague and what that means, because it is a big factor, and I think it's highly overlooked. So, again, we'll talk about that. Early on, as far as who I really like Michael Wacha in cash games. He's been almost the epitome of a cash game pitcher. Not a huge ceiling, but a great floor. He's got a good matchup today against the Twins, who struggle against right-handed pitching on the road. Wacha at home, so that Twins lineup, again, loses the DH, and they're very bad against right-handed pitching. Lackey did pretty good against him last night, so I love Wacha in this spot. He's about as safe as a play as you're going to get, in my opinion, on paper. And then the other guy I think you can look at, and it's kind of crazy, but I think Wade Miley going against the Braves. The Braves struggle against left-handed pitching. Wade Miley's very good against left-handed bats, and he's been very good at Fenway. And he's a pretty heavy favorite today. Does he deserve to be about a -150? Probably not. They are going against Tehran, but here's the thing. Wade Miley, the numbers, lately have been pretty good, and you get him at a pretty good price. So, Wacha and Miley are two guys I think you can look at with limited options early on. Be aware also late, I think a guy you can look at, a couple of cheap guys. Charlie Morton against the White Sox. There's a good chance that either LaRoche or Abreu is not going to play tonight because they do lose the DH. So chances are you might see a White Sox lineup with no Jose Abreu today, which means they're really going to be in trouble. So Charlie Morton, heavy ground ball pitcher, pretty good at home. Has been good in Pittsburgh. So Charlie Morton, for me, is in play on a 2-pitcher site for tournaments and even cash, because I think the matchup's just really, really good. And then another guy you want to look at, and a lot of people might cringe because they're going to look at the total and they're going to say he's on the road, and they're going to say, oh, wow, the Rangers against lefty. Here's the thing. The Rangers against lefties are not as good as you think. The numbers, I wrote the article on RotoWire. Actually, there's been more 15-point games on FanDuel from left-handed pitchers against the Rangers, than pretty much any team this year. So just be aware. I think Brett Anderson's in a very interesting spot tonight. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be on him because they're going to get scared away the run total. But I think Brett Anderson, who's been pitching pretty good lately, now he does go to the American League. He does go to a hitter's park. I get all that. But I think that just means that he's going to be very low owned in a tournament. And mostly on a two-pitcher site for me. I don't know if I could roll with him on a one-pitcher site. But, when I look at the data, and I did the article this week on RotoWire, what really stood out for me is the number of big games that left-handed pitchers have put up against the Rangers this year. So just be aware that the Rangers are very susceptible to left-handed pitching, and maybe Brett Anderson, somebody you want to take a look at. Check us out today at 12 noon Eastern with Benny and Josh in the Curve. Appreciate you guys joining in and participating. We got early, we got late, and the early game does start at 1:45, so we can get you on the early and we can get you on the late slate. So looking forward to that today. And thanks again for joining us. Excited for today. And as we always say here at RotoCurve, stay classy, DFS.